Hi everybody, I am Marian from Deathbird Entertainment. We are busy creating a point-and-click adventure game. It's called A Little Less Desperation. It's about Jacob, a vegetable farmer who gets abducted into space by aliens. And I would like to show you around a bit behind the scenes. We have been asked, why don't you show any concept art? It's very popular and game developers do it because people like to see how the artwork is created. We can't show you any concept art because we don't have any, but we can show you how we create our artwork. We did this time-lapse screen recording of one of our backgrounds. It shows a statue of Quetzalcoatl, the Maya god. Actually, you would find such a statue rather in Mesoamerica, but we decided not to be too precise about history and geography in our game. If you work in 2D, if you draw or paint your images by hand or with a software, it is wise to create detailed concept art. You have to specify exactly where your character will be able to walk in the scene and which object he will have to interact with. You need to avoid unwanted obstacles. You need to ensure that the important objects are clearly visible and also take care that all objects have the correct size and that they all fit onto the image. Like this, you can have a nice concept art within a few hours and a pretty good idea of how the final image will look like. When it all looks good, you start drawing the final image, you draw the important objects, you add the details, and in the end you colorate it. In 3D you could say that the workflow is reversed. At first you have to create the objects in detail that you will need in the scene later on. In the beginning, when you haven't created many objects yet, this is a bit frustrating, because it can be very time-consuming, and although you're working all the time, you don't really have a clue of what the final image will look like. This is the phase when the 3D approach is a lot slower than the 2D way. When you have created most of the objects that will be needed in the image, you can start loading them into the scene and place them where you need them. You can adjust the size and the orientation and put them on places where they can be reached by your character. So when you have the chance to move everything around until it fits your needs, you don't really need concept art. But a clear idea inside your head is very helpful. Imagine you just finished a very nice image in 2D and everybody likes it, but then the team decides that it might look a lot nicer if it was taken from a different angle. From the other side of the room maybe. For the 2D artist, this means that he or she has to do it all again and start from zero. Here you have one of the big advantages of 3D. If you want to change the perspective of the scene, you just move the camera to a new position and there you go. Another big advantage is that you can reuse the objects you already have for other scenes, especially the additional stuff that is not so important, for example, grass, rocks or trees. This is where it all turns around and the 3D way becomes a lot faster than the 2D approach. it's also possible to create new things from objects that you have already finished. For example, you could take a bottle and change its proportions a bit, which is easy to do in 3D, and you get a vase or an ashtray. But if you want to have comic style, 3D software is probably not the best choice. One big problem with 3D is, well, that it looks like 3D, and it's not very easy to get rid of that look. Using a comic renderer helps a bit, because it draws the outlines and other lines automatically. But then it still looks like 3D just with outlines on it. So you need to do more. The most important thing is the modeling. The objects themselves should already look like as if taken from a comic. You can see that in our artwork. Everything is bent and crooked. It's very easy to create accurate and straight models of things in 3D, but unfortunately there is no such function as crookify. So you have to go the hard way and create the models in a bent and crooked way, which means a lot of editing at the vertex level. Usually, when you create images with 3D software, the most important question is, how do I create materials and lights to get a realistic result? For our purpose, the question is, how do I create materials and lights to make it look nice and interesting? So I created many materials that don't behave like normal materials. They still give you a good idea about depth and structure, but they don't look real anymore, which takes us one step closer to comic look. And for the lights, we don't want lights like in the real world. We use very many colored light sources in our 3D scenes that help us to exaggerate light effects. You could say that we use the lights to paint colors onto the scene. In the video there is a nice and simple example that shows how the 3D approach is slow at the beginning and gets fast towards the end. We decided to cover the statue with a liana, just to make the puzzle a bit harder for the player. And of course to make it look nicer. So the first step is to create one liana. The stem, the leaves. I adjusted the points to get a bent and crooked look. This takes a lot more time than to just draw a liana. But then the process speeds up. You can see how I create many bent lines that kind of entangle the statue. This takes some time too, but in the end that's done pretty quickly. And in the end it gets really fast. I just tell the program to let the liana follow those lines. And voila, we have a statue entangled in a jumble of liana. And still you can easily edit and change it. And if you put it all together, you get something that is somewhere between a real comic look and a 3D look. But I think the result is quite nice. I hope you like the look too, and I hope you found our little making of interesting. If you would like to play our game, don't forget to vote for us on Steam Greenlight. Bye bye.